Welcome to Try Not to Overthink It, where we explore the intricate landscape of mental health, well-being, and everyday life. I'm RJ.
Khalil.
Join us as we dive into insightful conversations, share expert perspectives, and personal stories that shed light on the various dimensions of mental wellness. Whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or a deeper understanding of the human mind, this podcast is your safe space to engage, learn, and navigate the journey to a happier, healthier self. If you're new to the channel, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification button so you do not miss any of the topics that we discuss. So in today's episode, we are going to discuss breaking the cycle of violence. For me, this topic kind of came about because of the ongoing situation with the rapper Lil Durk. So for me, I am a huge rap fan, and Khalil is as well. And one of the things that I was having this conversation with one of our previous guests that's been on the podcast, and one of the things that she and I were discussing was music, and I was explaining to her that the genre of rap is the only genre of music where the expectation is that you are living what you are saying. And if you are unaware of the current situation that Lil Durk has found himself in, he has been he has been locked up by the feds while they are, attempting to indict him on federal charges for murder for hire. So all of this stemmed from, the back and forth that transpired with, King Von and ultimately him losing his life. And then allegedly there was a murder for hire plot on Quando Rondo, and, one of his associates, his cousin, Lil Pap, wound up losing his life over this situation. So they are now alleging that Lil Durk essentially had a murder for hire plot, and now this has just become a thing. And for me, I think that it was important for us to speak about this because, for a lot of our young viewers, our young men and our young women, growing up and, just this endless cycle of violence where someone loses their life, and then we feel like there's got to be get back. We feel like there's got to be vengeance. We feel like there's got to be reciprocity, and it just doesn't get us anywhere. And especially when you have these different platforms who platform and give the space and the life to young people losing their lives and continuing to lose their lives. Because I've seen where different people have argued about the interviewing and the talking and the discussing of, death. And so where you had, platforms like Math Hoffa and even Joe Budden to a certain degree, where they've argued that certain platforms like Adam 22 and Trap Lord Ross have, made money off of Black Death. They are not incorrect in that. But also, I also speak to them in the fact that, death is death, and it shouldn't matter who is profiting off of it, because you can't, we are allowing young people to throw their lives away. We are giving them platforms in which to gain a bigger audience, a bigger following, to promote and to push out negative and maladaptive behaviors. And then we're confused why the numbers are not improving, why the numbers for violent deaths or murders are not improving, where again, these young people feel like, hey, I'm rapping about killing people, so I have to actually really live this life. And then they're actually going out here, throwing their lives away or taking lives, as we've seen with Julio Fulio, where he lost his life. And then, him and the people he was into it with are just back and forth making songs about each other's family members or friends that have lost their lives. Like we've made this cool, or we've made this something that is we look forward to seeing, and it's not.
Right.
And I thought it was important for us to talk about that today. What do you think about that, Khalil?
Well, and even before we get into that, I was going to talk about how rap originally started, right? A lot of the forefathers that started this rap, Grandmaster Flash, Furious 5, Sugar Hill Gang, all the way to Rakim, back to some of the NWA members and different stuff like that. Originally, they were reporting on what they saw
Mhm.
in the streets or in urban areas, right, where there was some injustices they saw, and there was certain lifestyle that was appealing to young people, right?
Mhm.
Ice Cube was real good at that. And he's like, I'm walking around with gold in a pager, right? And the police want to pick on me. Well, a lot of that stuff, right, perpetuated what we see now. But when we look back at the original intention, it was to report what they saw daily, right? And they rapped about it and they vented about some of the injustices they were seeing, even when they were talking about, a cousin or family member, brother, sister getting shot, right? It was reported. And then, obviously we heard about, hey, we got to get them back, right?
Mhm.
In the latter stages of the rap era, we started to see that be glorified, right? You gonna have to slide on somebody if they did something to your family, right?
Getting it back in blood.
Or get it back in blood, right? If they did something to a member of your block, your crew, your gang, whatever the case be, right? You're gonna have to make up for it. And we're actually forgetting about some of the substance abuse and the drugs, right? That are
Mhm.
also the drug dealing, right? And the murders that occurred with that in the 90s. We jumped past all of that. So how the music transitioned and how we're talking more, it's not even about territory and gun wars, and it's more about get back and more
Mhm.
about how many guns that we have, how many guns, or what type of guns we have. And so Unique had said something. She couldn't be here, but she had said something that's jumped out to me. She said, "Hey, anybody who cannot control their emotions or regulate their emotions should not be able to have weapons of mass destruction on them, right? Shouldn't be able to own or use weapons of mass destruction." And we can even talk about today's political climate, right? The people we put in charge, are they emotionally stable, right?
Mhm.
Because they're in charge of a whole country, which those dynamics affect the world, right? If you're not in control emotionally, why should you be allowed to have these weapons? Now we can all fast forward to the topic that RJ brought up, perpetuating that cycle of violence, right? We pull certain things from the music, right? From entertainment, and then we apply it to our lives. But we've talked about this. If you don't put things in context, right, they won't always apply. All
Mhm.
right. I can't say I need to have a weapon on me at all times because I don't live in that type of environment. Even when I grew up in an urban environment, I've lived in an urban environment, right? I still didn't need it because I was not doing certain things that required it, right? And you don't even have to be selling drugs or anything like that. You could still live in a dangerous neighborhood. During times of my life, I've lived in some neighborhoods that were suspect. I remember my mother, I lived in one neighborhood. She was like, I am not stopping. She's like, I'm going to drive by and drop off what you need, and I'm going to keep it pushing because I don't hang out in areas like that, right? And so we have to think about that. Since not everybody is living that, when we're hearing it from the music, it is somewhat brainwashing our society to think that that's needed. I need to be able to have a weapon on me at all times. I should be paranoid if people are planning to get this or that. They might want to rob me. I need to shoot first if someone says something disrespectful to me. A lot of that's been perpetuated in the music.
So, I mean, to me, I don't want to put all the blame on rap because isn't it rap
No,
in and of itself is art, and as you said, it's reflective of everyday life for some people. You are essentially you know speaking on what you've experienced or what you've gone through. It is essentially a mirror of what you have lived. So I don't want to sit here and oversimplify and blame it on rap, because everyone has a choice.
right.
Um, while some lyrics do glorify violence, blaming rap, I think, ignores the broader societal factors that contribute to gun violence or violence as a whole. Because again, there's so many factors that factor into why people do the things that they do,
Right.
and ultimately it boils down to a choice. Now, for me, where I get frustrated is the fact that you have these young people that are being shown that, hey, certain maladaptive behaviors, that's the move to make.
Mm-hmm.
We don't glorize going to school. We don't glorize getting an education. We don't glorize being in the top percentile of your class. We don't
Right.
glorize going to job and working hard and being diligent and being a person of high moral character and high moral value. You know, we talk about being, even like when we had the episode where we shot about being a high value man. A lot of the things that people view as high value have nothing to do with character, have nothing to do with morals, have nothing to do with standards. It's all about money. It's all about money. It's all about, you know, tangible things that you can physically
Material.
touch and own,
Material
you know, and being able to lord it over other people. So for me to see young men and young women throw their lives away, lose their lives behind things that are completely avoidable, because again, you make a choice. You make a choice to pick up a gun. You make a choice to load a gun. You make up a choice to pull the trigger or point the gun at somebody. You make the choice to take someone's life. And then again, it carries over because again, now, because you've taken somebody's life over here, now somebody over there feels like they got to take a life over there. And it becomes a never ending cycle where you see now in cities like Chicago, where FYB J Mane has been, him and some of the other older rappers have been talking about pushing peace.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing peace, because you have these young people who are out here throwing their lives away over things that happened before some of them were even born.
Right.
You know, they're out here 13, 14, 15, 16 catching murder cases, catching bodies. Because even for me, you know, I'm a person that I love, you know, history, and I love to learn about different things. And that's where I came across Trap Lord Ross, where I was doing laundry one day. His videos happened to be longer form content. I think his video was like 2-3 hours long. And I'm listening to it while I'm doing laundry, folding clothes, and organizing my clothes and everything. And just the amount of violence that these young people experienced.
Right.
Before some of them were even old enough to buy a drink. They're out here experiencing family members, friends, people they grew up with dying. You know, and then we put this in music. We put this in music, and then where it's become cool to diss dead people. It's become lucrative and monetary wise, you know, from YouTube to Instagram to TikTok to Snapchat to mock and to laugh at someone losing their life over something that was senseless. Because I remember there was like a young man in New York, where him and his friends see somebody from the other side. They go run down on him. I can't remember what his name is right now, but they go run down on him. They start attacking him. He pulls out a knife and stabs the young man. He I think he was like 13, 14. Dies. The people from the other side then turn it into a dance and a song where they're mocking him dying.
Right.
They're mocking the fact that he got stabbed. And I was just like, in what universe is that okay? Right. But you knock the people for interviewing the people for making this type of music, or talking about the people who make this type of music, but then we don't knock the individuals for making this type of music in the first place.
Right.
Because music, as any consumer based product, it's based off of supply and demand. If there's not a demand for this type of music or this type of energy, guess what? People wouldn't make it. But because there is a high demand for this type of music and this type of product, guess what? People keep making it. People make this type of product for mass consumption, for people to think that it is okay to take someone's life, and to then in turn, because you took someone's life, you get caught by the police. Guess what? Now you've thrown your life away.
Right.
Because even with the individuals who killed Julio Fulio, the police were able to track everything that you did. They were able to track every location you were at, everything that you did, to the point to where they were able to, track you guys all down and, you know, arrest all of you guys.
Right.
And you guys, now you're probably going to spend the rest of your lives in prison.
And these are young people.
These are young people. These are not people who've lived a life.
Years old or 30 years old. These are all young people
These
under
are all young people. And
five.
so even when you see someone such as Lil Durk, going back to him, when you see someone such as himself, right? This is a generational curse where your father has spent the majority of your actual living life as a human being on this earth. Your father has spent the majority of your life in prison behind bars.
Right.
You now, if this is proven to be correct, you are looking at possibly spending the majority, if not the entirety of your children's lives behind bars.
Right. Now look
And
at that, right? And
and I
who
mean,
consequences that happens, and long lasting
mhm,
consequences for his children and their children.
yes. So you being, because I think his dad spent, I want to say like 26 years in prison. Big Dirk spent like 26 years in prison.
Mm,
Dirk himself he's in his mid 30s. He's in
mm,
his mid 30s. So for the almost the entirety of your life, your father was in prison. Instead
right.
of being out in the free world teaching you how to be a man, pouring male lessons into you, showing you the path in which you're supposed to go, he wasn't there because he was doing other things, which
Right.
got him locked up in prison. Now you potentially are going to do the same thing to your children, because I think Dirk has, I want to say, like six children. Little Dirk I think he's either got 6 or 7 kids.
Right.
So those 6 or 7 kids are going to grow up without their father. Their father's going to be absent.
Right.
Seeing you through video chat or through
Yeah,
fiberglass
it's not this.
window, that's not the same thing as being able to physically touch your father, physically being able to have conversations with your father, and for him to be able to pour into you, to help you not make the same poor choices that he made. And so when we see these young men and women out here feeling like this is the only way to be, this is their only way out. I mean, to me, I don't know. I just
Well,
don't know.
and it brings us back to rap, how it made this transition, even from Tupac and Biggie. Everybody talk about, well, those deaths were it didn't make sense, and none of that had to happen, right? Well, we've taken that culture, right, and it's transition. I mean, all we talk about now is riding on our ops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sliding on our
Spinning the
ops,
block.
spinning the block, killing people, right? That's what's glorified, like you said now, right? So rap is transition, and so if you're of the school of thought, well, look, if you're gonna talk about it, you gotta live it. Remember, just like we were saying, it originally started where people were giving reports of what was going on in the streets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, since that's what's going on the street, you got to talk about it, and they're putting people in songs, right?
Yeah,
They're making videos mocking people, right?
in the
Um,
graveyard.
at the graveyard, mocking people, right? Which is obviously, when we talk about society, right? Things that aren't acceptable, right, have become acceptable, right? We talked about social
Absolutely.
acceptability in one of our last videos. It's acceptable to make videos mocking dead people, right? And when RJ, when you brought that up earlier, I immediately started to think about, how that impacts a family. We're not even
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it. If I saw my cousins, or I saw my brothers, or I see my sister, and people are mocking them, the amount of rage I would feel, right? If I did not have any emotional control, I'd have to walk whoever that was down. There probably would be no drive by at that point. And so we start to think what happens to the mind, especially the age of social media. Everything's out there. So people are
Yep.
seeing them mock your family member. So that's the animosity and the anger that would bring up. And so that level of disrespect, right? Because remember, we saw it before. We saw Biggie talking about having sex with, Pac talking about having sex with Faith, and then Biggie talking about, what I'm saying, you got raped, this and that, right? And we saw that level of disrespect. Now it's taken completely different turn for the worse, and it's been stepped up. It's
Mm-hmm.
brought up a couple of
Absolutely.
notches, right, and to a level that would anger or incense or incite anger in anybody, right? And we start thinking about how this affects the family unit, right? How it affects people going forward, their children and their seeds, right? Those people are gonna be completely enraged, right? they aren't going to recover from this because, yes, of course, any amount of violence on your family would make you be depressed, right? But when it's shown on media, it's put out there that this person was killed because of this, and then they disrespected this person. Then somebody from his block went to disrespect them. When it's put out there like that, that perpetuates the cycle. So when those kids get older, they are going to not like those people from that block, from that gang, from that family, and it's going to create what was those two families, the Hatfield and McCoys, right?
Mm-hmm.
After a while, if you've seen that documentary, after a while, the killing was just like it didn't matter. It was just like going to get a drink of water
Or breathing.
or breathing, right? And so we are debased when we think about that level of thinking. Like that's worse than what animals don't even do that.
No, they typically, like when you look at something like a lion or a hyena or a cheetah or a leopard, they don't kill for the sport of killing. They kill for
Hunger,
survival. I need to eat
survival.
this. And the fact that, like I said before, and I've said this on previous episodes, we do not value each other. We have lost the overall value that a human life has. There's no monetary value that you can put on another human being. So
Right.
to have a mom, a daughter, a brother, a son, a father just be gone out of
Mm.
a family because of the fact that I didn't like the way you looked at me, or I didn't like what you said about me on a song, or I don't like you because you're from around the corner. That seems ridiculous to me. But the fact of the matter is, we've made that normal. We've made that normal. And so there are so many young men and so many young women that are not reaching their fullest potential. They're not, as we call in psychology, self actualizing, being the best version of themselves because they're not even getting the opportunity to, because violence has become normal. Taking a life has become normal. Devaluing another human being has become normal because when you see people like before Julio Fulio lost his life, him and Young and Ace are going back and forth. Where Young and Ace and his friends had the Who I Smoke video,
Right.
where they're at a golf course and they're rapping over the Vanessa Carlton song, and they're talking about all the different people that are
Ridiculous.
dead, and they're laughing and joking about it.
Right.
And then you had Julio Fulio, who then raps over Fantasia's "When I See You,"
Hmm.
and he's talking about the people. He's in the graveyard,
Yep.
rapping about people that have passed away or lost their lives through this senseless violence. And I mean, to me, what does that do for somebody? What does that do for anybody? What it does is it continues to tear apart our communities, and then it puts our young men and our young women in prison
Yeah.
or in the ground. And so instead of them being able to be the best version of themselves, use their talent for the betterment of themselves, their families, their communities, their trajectory has been drastically cut short.
Right.
And
Instead of
for what?
using that influence for something positive, right?
Mm-hmm. Positive
You
and
got a
constructive.
you got a whole area dedicated to you, right? In your music, right? Everybody's supporting it, right? Why aren't we using it for something that's going to build up that area and
Mm-hmm.
build up? Because I mean, like people don't realize music is no longer what it used to be. Like when I
Mm-mm.
was quoting Grandmaster Flash, people on the East Coast and a few people here on the West Coast who were into music were supporting that music, right? But it really only spanned a few cities. You know what I mean? It wasn't going, it wasn't worldwide. Right now, people can make music out of Illinois, right? Out of the somewhere in LA, out of DC, out of Atlanta, out of New York, right? And it will touch Russia. You get
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? Like people aren't really looking at it. It's worldwide now. So
Absolutely.
it's not just this little thing in this neighborhood that only reaches this certain area. Your influence is worldwide. People aren't looking at the power they have. You know, we're the
And the
type
influence.
in the influence, even like Kodak Black, right? I was just talking to somebody recently about that, right? And Kodak was supporting Donald Trump, right? I'm not going to get into politics, but because of the influence that he has, right? Donald Trump even said it. They're seeing more African American voters out
Hmm.
there, and I'm pretty sure Trump paid for that endorsement. Whatever the case is, that's how much influence certain people have, and I think sometimes they minimize that, and it's like, I don't care. Well, how are you going to get away with a murder now that you have all these eyes on you? It doesn't make sense to someone who's thinking rationally. Well, we know when we get angry, all right, we think with our limbic system, it's we're emotionally charged, and we're not thinking rationally. And that's why we have a lot of these murders. Everybody's watching you right now.
Hmm.
How are you getting away with a murder when all eyes are on you?
Well, I mean, the thing that we have to understand is there is power in our words, power
Right.
for good and power for negativity. And so you have the power to stop the violence you through your words. You have the ability to promote positivity through your words. You have the ability to save the lives of young women and young women and young men from throwing their lives away or from
Right.
crashing out
Right.
by speaking to how detrimental being focused on the maladaptive and the negative things can be. And for me, and this is where, like, for me, I had to, because I was really big. I was, being a huge rap fan, I was really into certain artists. But then when I started to become more aware of the detrimental effects of certain behaviors, and even, I've said this on previous episodes, that everything on you that takes in data is a gate,
Right.
and you have to be mindful of what you are allowing on the opposite side of the gate. So your ears are a gate, your eyes are a gate, your
Okay.
nose is a gate, your mouth is a gate, your skin is a gate, because those things take in data. So when you are taking in certain things over and over and over and over and over again, it starts to affect how you feel about things. It starts to affect how you think about things. It starts to affect how you process things. It starts to affect your relationship, with your environment and other people that you come in contact with. So
Yeah.
when you are being inundated with negativity, you're being inundated with certain maladaptive thoughts, certain maladaptive opinions, certain maladaptive beliefs. Guess what? You start to have those opinions, those thoughts, those beliefs of on your own.
On your own.
And
Right.
so, I say that to say this. So, like one particular rapper, he lost his life, I want to say a couple years back. FBG Duck. He lost his life, got murdered in broad daylight while he was out shopping. And so now his mom is in the process of suing Lil Durk. I can't remember exactly on for what grounds she was suing. She's suing him for, but she's suing him. We're in the process of suing him. And the issue that for me I have with her is, as his mother, if this was my mom would have let me make one song where I'm talking about shooting or killing somebody, even if I'm not a shooter or a killer.
Right.
My
Right.
mom would let me make one song about doing that before my mama is in my behind. She
Right.
gonna be on me, because again, my parents, who are, God fearing and, you know, consistently and actively and purposively invested in what goes on with me and my siblings, they didn't play that. They don't play that. I do the things that I do. I say the things that I say because my parents poured things into me. And certain things were normalized for me, being a man of integrity, being a man of honor, being a man of character, being a man with morals and values. Like, those things were normalized for me because I saw my parents do that. My parents poured those things into me. And when they saw me doing things that were maladaptive or counterproductive to what
Productive.
they had
Right.
poured into me, my parents was on me. They didn't give me the
As they
opportunity to
should have been.
continue to go down the wrong path. And so for me, and having been a fan of his and listened to a lot of his songs, you know, I had to realize, like, there's only so long that you can speak certain things into the universe
Right.
before eventually those things come back to you. And so for a lot of these quote unquote drill rappers, where you're speaking about spinning the block on the op, sliding on somebody, where even like where people, the fans, were, like, pointing out to Dirk, when are you sliding for Von?
Right.
Like,
Right.
the
Right.
fans
So
are saying
on
this
social media, the
because
fans were
because
saying that.
because the fans are expecting you to, to throw out
Man
swift
of your
vengeance.
word. To be a
Yeah,
man of
because
your
because
word.
the expectation
That's what they
from
want to
what
do.
you have created out there into the universe is this is who you are. You are this type of person. So when you are speaking that, hey, I'm sliding on this person, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, the expectation is that, hey, when certain things happen, this is what you're gonna do.
Right.
That is the expectation for you as the person that has created this, that this is what you're gonna do.
Right.
And for me, it's unfortunate that so many people have lost their lives for the sake of violence, for the sake of violence.
Yeah. Violence
At the end
begets
of the
violence.
day, somebody has to be the bigger person, and someone has to say, hey, enough people have died, enough people, we've buried enough people. We've lost too many sons, we've lost too many daughters. Because the thing about it though is it's not always the people that were in the mess that get hit,
Right.
because bullets don't have names on them. You'll
Mm-hmm.
have somebody just happens to be standing there.
Wrong
They
place.
happen to be friends with someone else. They're not even a part of the street life or any of that nature. They just happen, this is my cousin or this somebody I grew up with. They happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they catch a bullet intended for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Or they even
Don't have
become
names on it.
they
Bullets don't
don't.
have names on it.
Or you see people, because there was a young lady in New York where she was friends with somebody else. And because they couldn't get to him, they
Right.
got to her, and they ended up taking her life because she was friends with somebody else. Now, she wasn't a part of the life, but she grew up with this person. She hung out with this guy, and because they couldn't get to him, they killed her.
Right. Yeah. Next best thing.
And
Your
and
best friend.
so
There it
the
is.
the thing about it though is, like I said, now her family has to grow up without her because she was friends with someone else who was about that life, and her association cost her her life.
Right. And how is, when we think about it, right? So you riding for your friend to go get these people, how does that bring their daughter back, right? Or how does that restore justice?
It
That's the
doesn't.
questions. That's a therapeutic question, right? That we have to ask. So how is this going to make this right? By you going to get back, or you sliding on these people, right? How does that equate to a life, like you said before? Because a life there's no amount of monetary money you can put on life, right? One of my clients, he's an insurance adjuster, and he brought that up, like when people die in fires and stuff. What type of monetary money can you put on a life? It doesn't make sense, right? So when we talk about, well, hey, because they killed my man, I got to go kill their man, right? Because that makes it right. But how does that balance the scales? That's where we talk about justice. And people always say, well, an eye for an eye. That's still not going to solve the problem that families are going to be missing these people. Children are going
when
to be missing their parents. It
when does
doesn't.
enough become enough though? I mean,
Right,
like, to
right,
me, just because again, when does enough become enough? Because again, it perpetuates a never ending cycle. You got
right.
your get back, I got to get my get back, and then we're just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until the end of time.
So everybody
At
did.
some point in time, everyone's dead at that point. And so, or you've been fighting for so long, you don't even remember what you initially fighting about in the first place.
Right. Well,
And
and
so,
things aren't placed in context as well, right?
mhm,
Um, and I hate to be like this, but anytime we talk about the biblical context of eye for eye, people take that out of context, right? It's done under governance, right?
mhm.
It wasn't done like, oh, we're gonna let you to, well, because you did this, I'm gonna chop your leg off or chop your arm off, and then there was no one to govern, right? Like, or it was just, free for all. There was actually a governing standard. There was people in charge of the eye for an eye theory, of the law. There was somebody in charge of that law that would govern you. So if they would actually read it and where it came from during that time, right? Which is definitely during a time where they did not even have judges at that time, right? There were people in the community to actually govern this. So we use it loosely in context, but it was never meant to be an eye for an eye, an eye for an eye, and just keep going forward.
But see, you alluded to something that we have lost sight of in today's society. So you alluded to a belief in the structure and the system to
Right.
work things out. In
Right.
today's society, we push this narrative of no snitching because you saw that with the YSL Rico case where,
Mhm, mhm.
oh, this person's a snitch or this person's telling or this person's this or this person's that. At the end of the day, if you are a law abiding citizen, you don't have to worry about being put in a situation for anybody to even tell on you. And
Right.
that's where, as I said before, we value the wrong things nowadays. We value being flashy and doing things rather than doing the right things. And so when you are doing the right things, you don't find yourself in situations too often where you're having to take someone else's life in response to someone taking somebody else's life.
Right.
You do not find yourself in those situations. And if you do, you might need to reevaluate the relationships or the things that you are doing. Like one of the guys, Matt Hoffa, was interviewing one of the guys on his show one time. And the guy he was talking about how he had to change his thought process,
Mm.
where he kept getting gun cases because he was going places and getting caught with a gun.
Oh, with the
And so
right.
what he had to realize, he finally had the wherewithal and the foresight to say, hey, if I have to keep going, if I can't go places, I'm not going to
Out
places
carrying
because
a
I
weapon.
can't carry my gun, then I probably need to stop going to those places where I need a gun.
Right.
And so
Logic. Right.
for me, it goes back to what I was, the point I was making about, FBG Duck's mother. As the parental figure, the authority figure, the old head, the elder, somebody has to be the grown up in the room to say, hey, we're not doing this. You are not doing this. And
Mm.
so we also have to have faith in the system to handle things. We have to get out of this antiquated thought process of no snitching, because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, our young men, our young women are losing their lives for senseless reasons. And then that's what is not getting them the justice is the fact that we don't believe in the system. We don't believe in the system. We don't believe in working with the police. We don't believe in telling. We don't
Right.
believe in cooperating. So you have murders being unsolved. You have acts of violence being unsolved because people don't want to cooperate. We think it's bad to tell the police. We think
Right.
that it's bad to go to the police. We think that it's bad to cooperate with the police. And I mean, at the end of the day, how does that solve anything?
Well,
Because
and I think
again,
people also forget that when we talk about no snitching and no telling and this and that, people also forget because I've had people that I was associated with, and when I spoke to them about certain crimes that they got caught with, that had and people who had to do time, and usually they were drug offenses, right? Growing up in the DC area, most of the time there are people already inside of your crew, inside of the inner workings of the dealing, right? Who are already telling. That's what
mm,
the craziest part is. The DA already has these people marked. They've been placed in there to make sure that, hey, look, because whatever deal they set up with the feds, whatever is going on, we need intel, and they get intel. So when it comes down to it, sometimes it's people you actually know who have already snitched, have already told. So that's why this type of nonsense going around, no snitching, no this, no that, they already telling. Sometimes
yeah,
it's
I mean,
your own peoples that are
it's
already
your own people that set you up. It's the people closest to you that get you set up the fastest. And I mean, the thing about it though is
telling.
it goes back to what I said before of making smarter decisions from the very beginning. If you are making smarter decisions from the very beginning, you don't find yourself in
In those
certain
situations.
positions in the first place. But to our original point of the fact that we have glamorized the loss of life,
Right.
we have glamorized and you know, put these things on pedestals. We put, these performers up on these pedestals like they're people that we should aspire to be.
Right.
What part of the game is that? That pumping poison into your community is something to aspire to.
Right.
Killing somebody else that's a part of your community is something that we should aspire to. For our young boys and our young girls to grow up looking and glamorizing this and idolizing this, Because I mean, for me, I'm not gonna sit here and try to play like I wasn't one of those people. Like I was the hugest Ti Young Jeezy fan when I was in high school. I remember being in high school and having the Snowman T-shirts. Having the Snowman T-shirts, I had like a different T-shirt, well, a different color Snowman T-shirt, that I could wear every day, and getting in trouble because I was wearing those T-shirts and our school had banned them.
Yeah.
So wearing the T-shirt, of course, I'm getting a write up
Supporting that.
or I'm getting in trouble for it. And I mean, I used to bump the mixtapes, and then as I got older and I'm really cognizant of what people are actually saying,
Yeah.
I started realizing like,
They
wow,
understood what they talking about.
like you really understood what they were talking about. Like, wow, this is the wrong message, because when you know better, you do better. And when you are exposed to something enough, it becomes normal for you. When violence and death, you are exposed to it enough, it becomes normal for you. It becomes normal for you, as Khalil was pointing to earlier, like breathing. Taking someone's life, you don't even think twice about it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think twice about it because it's what you know. It's you having to dive on the floor because people gonna drive by and get to shooting.
Right.
You know that after certain times, don't be in certain places because there's a real
There's gonna be
likelihood
some killing.
there's going to be some killing. And the fact that at 13, 14, 15, 16, you have experienced a crazy amount of violence, like you've been deployed in the military somewhere, or
Right.
that you live in a
Yes.
war torn country, that
Mm-hmm.
makes no sense.
Well,
And I mean,
those just talking about that, the impact, and people don't even realize about the impact of trauma that's going on the Gaza Strip right now. I just saw the news article like 2 days ago about the children. They were talking about, man, the impact of this war on those kids.
it
And
is it
what's going
is it is not it is a generational thing now, because what is going to happen is these kids are going to have kids, and when they have kids, they're going to share with their kids what they survived,
Yep.
what they experienced, what they went through. And then their kids are going to have conversations with their kids and be telling them what their parents
Down the line.
experienced, what they survived. No different than as you see for us as African Americans, how we pass down state stories from slavery, and
Slavery
how we
going
pass
down.
down stories from the civil rights era. People being beat on by the police, having water hoses turned on them, going to jail, Jim Crow, not being able to drink out of certain water fountains, not being able to eat at certain restaurants,
Right.
the sit-ins, the different protests that we had during the civil rights era. Like all of
Segregation.
these stories are
All
passed
that.
on. So when we talk about the generational impact, the emotional impact, the mental impact that this level of violence that we're seeing, where people are just literally throwing their lives away,
Right.
and then again, you then tell the next generation and the next generation and the next generation, and as I said before, you get to the point to where certain individuals are like, people just bring them up, like what's his name, Tuka. People spoke about smoking on Tuka for years.
Mm.
4 years. And I mean, I'm pretty sure his mother is tired of people disrespecting her child. This is somebody she carried for 9 months.
Right.
She carried for 9 months, birthed him, took care of him, took care of herself so he could come in this world and be healthy. And he's been antiquated to a lyric in a rap song.
Right.
That the impact that has to have for a mother, or even Pop Smoke's mother, where she has to experience different people interviewing the young man that allegedly took her son's life.
Right.
And she has to experience that. Or even King Von's family, where, DJ Vlad is interviewing Lil Tim, who we know about what happened there. You're interviewing him. What does that do for society? What benefit does it provide to society, to our community, where we're platforming and talking about certain things and discussing certain things like killing each other?
Mm-hmm.
What does that do for us? It doesn't do anything. It doesn't improve our society as a whole. It doesn't enrich our communities as a whole. It doesn't elevate us to another level. So I'm confused as to why we're perpetuating certain things. And I mean, that's where, for me, as I said, both Joe Budden and Matt Hoffa are very correct that you are profiting off of young Black death. But I challenge them as well in regards to you giving platforms to young African American males and females to come out here and talk about killing each other.
Well, look at, and I know this is on a lower scale, but even look at Drake and Kendrick Lamar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did those songs get so popular when they're talking
Because it
about
was mess and drama.
Right, right. And people
Mess
people
sells.
wanted to see someone get hurt out of that, right?
Yeah.
Even though we know it was a lot of it was for show, but
Mm-hmm.
people wanted to see K Dot go dumb and do
Mm-hmm.
something. You know what I'm saying? People wanted to see somebody get killed. I don't believe that we just like the movie Gladiators. Them people who are in the stands at the Coliseums, they want to see blood.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And we're just as savage as they are.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about, and this is what's so scary about our European influence culture in America. And yes, we are, like the Europeans, because this is not a collectivist culture. This is an individualistic culture. And so for those African Americans who hear this and be like, oh, I'm not European. Yes, you are, because that's what you've come under that society, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very savage because the Europeans used to call a lot of the third world countries and underdeveloped countries savages, right? Well, no, we're
Savages and barbarians.
barbarians because we are. Because of our mindset, we want to see blood, we want to see violence. That's
Mm-hmm.
entertaining to us. Look at the shows we watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
We glorify witchcraft, wizardry, all that. That's what we do. You know what I mean? We're paganistic and savage because that's where it comes from. And we've been like that. But people who are truly in touch with that God consciousness knows how important a life is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we glorifying that. So when people come to me with all this, oh yeah, we're such a high technological society, and we operate on this and that. No, we're more debased than the third world country. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We
Because
throw
we
food
know
out,
we know better and we choose not to be
and
better.
we choose not to do better. We throw
And
food out when there's people who could eat it. You know
yep,
what
and
I'm saying?
that's where for me I had to be very cognizant of what I exposed myself to. There are certain shows I stopped watching. Love and Hip Hop, stop watching it. Because again, we're just on TV throwing drinks in each other, flipping tables, instead of being able to sit down like two educated individuals and being able to talk our differences out, be able to reach some middle ground. We may not agree wholeheartedly, but being able to reach some middle ground, we can't even do that. Love and Marriage Huntsville. Had to stop watching that because what makes it even worse is all of you guys are professionals.
Yeah.
Professionals in some way, shape, or form. You got degrees with an S, but we choose to be less than where we could be. We choose that. And so I had to stop watching certain shows, stop exposing myself to certain things, because again, if things do not add and multiply in your life, they subtract and divide out of them. So when you watch shows like Wendy Williams, where her whole platform was just tearing down somebody else, it wasn't about lifting anybody up. It wasn't about platforming people for doing something positive or constructive. You're spilling tea and trying to embarrass somebody.
Yep.
Even Tasha K, her YouTube platform, time after time after time after time after time, you're not hearing her speak about the positive things that somebody does, the constructive things that somebody does. It's just a platform of just tearing somebody else down and spilling somebody else's, unmentionables for the world to see. So to me, as I said before, we have normalized maladaptive behaviors, which again perpetuates certain things. It perpetuates the violence. It perpetuates the foolishness, the tomfoolery, the shenanigans, just the craziness. And then we're confused why society's in the state that it's in.
Right.
I'm not confused. And for me, again, it's not too late for us to turn things around. We have to stop feeding into certain things because the things that you feed grow.
Right.
The things that you don't feed wither and die.
Yeah.
So if you feed and you nourish and you cultivate and you pour into positive, constructive things, guess what? Those things grow, they flourish, they elevate, they continue to just be, just be. But when you feed into, conversely, when you feed into the negativity, you feed into the foolishness, you feed into the violence, guess what? We're making the next generation worse off than we are.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is
precedence.
that behavior, that negative behavior, the maladaptive behavior, the maladaptive, thought processes and beliefs, they start to take precedent over the positive, constructive things. And
Mhm.
so for me, I am, I don't surround myself with certain people or certain things that are not conducive to me being the best version of myself.
Right.
And I would hope that whenever I have children, that I am able to leave them in a better world than what I had. But what that looks like is, we have to start prioritizing the right things and stop prioritizing the wrong things.
Wrong things.
Because again, I'm not telling anybody that losing someone, you shouldn't be hurt. You shouldn't be mad. You shouldn't feel some type of way. But there's
Right.
always a better way than picking up a gun and continuing violence. Because
Right.
again, now you put yourself on a path. Because vengeance is, a fire that just continues to burn. It doesn't go away.
Right.
And when you get vengeance, somebody's going to want vengeance on you. And then when they get their vengeance, someone's going to want vengeance on them. And it just becomes never ending until everyone's dead.
Right. And so we talk about that grief cycle, right? When you lose somebody, right? And yes, there's stages to grief, but grief, the stages don't have to go in any order. But what we
Mm-hmm.
do know is that it usually reaches a point of acceptance, right? That's supposedly the last stage, right? But how can I get to acceptance if this violence is just constantly perpetuated? Because I can't accept people just continually dying. You get what I'm saying? Like, oh, and if I do start to accept that, that means that it's become socially acceptable. You get what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? And so we were going back to earlier, anytime these behaviors are starting to be accepted, that means we're operating on the knowledge that, hey, one day, if I leave my house and the ops are there, I'm supposed to die that day, or they have to die that day.
Mm-hmm.
So we're operating at a strategically, all right, at a point where it's like euthanasia. I mean, like we're purposely killing ourselves
Mm-hmm.
in some way.
Absolutely.
That's scary to me that we have a society, especially when it comes to, and it's not just African Americans, but it's all of us now embracing this. Why are we
Yeah.
embracing this? Why shouldn't we be able
We
to say this isn't right?
we
We're
have
not.
literally, as you said, it's not just one group of people. We as a collective
Yes.
have embraced violence, have embraced negativity, have embraced maladaptive behaviors. And I mean, the thing about it though is, again, it's easier said than done. It's easier to say, oh, we should just stop doing these things. The thing about it though is there are certain things that have to be unlearned, have to be
Hmm.
reparented, and you have to see what better looks like. And that's where, as I said before, like Khalil and I talked about the benefits of men participating in therapy. This
Yes.
is why we shot that episode, because again, for some of us, we don't know what better looks like. By being able to see what better looks like, by being able to process what we've already been through, by being able to heal from the things that we've survived. Because if you live long enough, you survive some shit. I don't
Right.
care what nobody tell you.
Right.
I don't care how easy or how cushy your life is. If you live long enough, you survive some shit. So by being able to experience, by being able to see, by being able to process, by being able to heal, by being able to get past things that you have survived, you can then do what we call being a force multiplier. You can then help one person turns into two people, two turns into four people, four turns into eight people, and
Yes.
so on and so forth
It multiplies.
until we're getting the good shit out there and we're getting people to leave the negative shit alone. And that's where, for me as a therapist and as a man, I always try to lead with what I want from other people. I
Hmm.
try to always speak positivity over somebody, because you can become a self fulfilling prophecy. You
Right.
can speak negativity over your life to where nothing positive ever happens for you, because you manifest what you believe. So if you believe that God is going to find a way for you, God is going to make a way for you, you just keep telling yourself that things could always be worse. Let's get it. God got me. And you keep speaking that over your life. Eventually things will turn around. You'll see life kind of get out of your way. But when you
Right.
continue to speak negativity over your life, oh man, this is just some bullshit, da 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 da, guess what? Life has a way of breaking your back and dropping you to your knees too. And
Yeah.
so that is
Real
where,
quick.
for me, real quick, and that is where, for me, as a man and as a provider, that's what I always speak, to my clients and to other people, is the positive, because things could always be worse. We could be dead right now, or we could be
Right.
in a
Right.
much less
Always.
advantageous situation. And
Right.
so by being able to reach people and being able to help people get to that point to where they unlearn and they relearn some more positive things in substitution for the negative things, guess what? People are more likely to go out and do better because they now know what better looks like.
Right. They have that model for it.
Mhm.
And that's on us. And that's on us as elders in the community, right? Once we start getting up there in age, if you're in your early, even in my early 30s, I know I had to make a transition. There's certain
Mhm.
music that did not fit what I wanted to do with my life. It
Absolutely.
didn't fit the narrative, right? I couldn't listen. I remember in my early 30s, I was like 31, 32, and Gucci Mane had started doing his thing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Him and OJ,
It's that
Juice
it's that
Man, that
so icy Gucci.
yeah, right. The So Icy Gucci, right? And then they would make the trap say, hey, and they talk about quarter brick, half brick. And I remember being in my early 30s, you know what I'm
and
saying? Because
you
I'm
and
older
you
than them.
you
So
you bang into that.
right. And I'm like listening to it on the mixtape, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't listen to this every day. I'm trying to go back to school and become a therapist and do this and
Mm-hmm.
do that, right? And I could not allow that because music does have power, right? It does affect how I think. And so I had to put some of that down. Not to say the beat wasn't jumping. It wasn't to say like, when you go to a club and you hear it, you can't dance to it. What I'm saying is that couldn't be the majority of what I listened to throughout the day. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
healthy. It wasn't conducive for what I wanted to do in my life. And I think we've gotten accustomed to that, regardless of whatever the music is, whatever they're saying, right? We'll still listen to that as grown adults and we'll promote that. So the kids hear that. The kids are because look, you go to a party, right? The adults and the kids all listen to the same music. Sexy Red, all that.
Absolutely.
Everybody know the
Absolutely.
lyrics. We all do. We listen to the same thing. So I think if one adult would start to stand up, right, that would encourage other people to stand up. Like, you know what? That music isn't even acceptable. I don't want to play that. I don't want
Absolutely.
you to listen to that. I want you to listen to something that's going to create a thirst for knowledge or growth. And it's okay. Yes, you can dance to different stuff. I get it. But this can't be what you're listening to all the time. You know
No,
what I mean?
it can't be. And I think that's where, as you said before, um, the the company that you keep plays a huge part. The company that you keep plays a huge part. And like you said, as elders, we have to recognize I want you to be better than me.
Right.
And
Right.
because I want you to be better than me, hey, let me come over here and let me mentor you. Let me pour into your cup. Let me show you what better looks like. Because again, you are more likely to do things that you see
Yeah.
than something that you're just in a passerby moment exposed to. So when you see somebody that you have a connection to doing the right thing, saying the right thing, and then actually living the right way, guess what? It becomes that much easier for you. I can actually touch that. And that's where, for me, one thing I have to give my father his flowers for. My father, through his career, matriculated through his career, did all the things he's supposed to do. He started his own nonprofit for being able to help those who don't have those situations, don't have the good mentorship, to put kids in situations for them to thrive and to be successful, not just exist.
Right.
Um, to
Right.
see him do those things and to see children go from not making the best grades to now being college bound and then actually making it through college and starting a career and actually thriving in their career. That's what we should be doing. That's what we should all strive to do. And
Right.
that's where, like you said, it is not necessarily just a African American community thing. No, this is an everybody thing, because again, we as a society have to choose doing the right thing over doing what the quick thing is or what the
Right.
easy thing is. We strayed away from doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do into doing what feels good and what looks good and what is going to get us likes and retweets and shares and subscribers. And again, it has our society upside down, and we're confused why the murder rate is so high, why so many kids are dropping out of school, why teen pregnancy is so high.
Right.
We're confused,
All
and
the
it's just
consequences,
all
right?
the consequences of doing the what looks good, what feels good,
Feels good in the moment.
in the moment, instead of doing what is right. When you're doing the right things, yes, it's not always going to feel good.
Right.
Yes, it's not always going to be popular. You may not have the most friends. Everyone's not going to like you all the time. But guess what? You find yourself being in situations that you otherwise would not have been in, for the betterment of you, that you otherwise would have missed out on because you were doing the easy things.
Right.
Favor isn't fair. And if when you are a person that is favored by God and you find yourself doors opening for you, blessings that you never even asked for are coming your way, that happens because you were faithful to the things that you were supposed to be doing instead of doing what everyone else was doing. So we are going to end the conversation there. This is Try Not to Overthink It signing out. I'm RJ.
And this is Khalil.
If you like what you heard, we ask that you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification button. Make sure that you tune in to every episode that we have because we drop content weekly. If you would prefer to listen to us instead of watch us, I don't know why you would, because we are some very, very good looking people. I'm gorgeous. But if you would like to listen to us
I'm
instead
just
of
handsome.
watch us,
That's all that is. I'm not gorgeous. I'm just handsome.
yeah, I'm gorgeous. But if you would prefer to listen to us instead of watch us, we can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Audible, pretty much anywhere you can get your audio files, we can be located. If you would like to interact with us outside of listening to us or watch us, we can be found on social media on both TikTok and Instagram. We drop content there daily. But this is us signing out, and we will catch you next time. Peace.